The Veldrathi hegemony had ruled the Orion Spur for 3,000 years. In all that time, no species had ever challenged their power. No fleet had ever defeated their crystalline warships. No weapon had ever pierced their shields. The Veldrathi believed with complete certainty that they were the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever produced. Commander Kethro stood on the bridge of his patrol vessel, the shimmering dawn, and watched the stars drift past on the main display. His shift was almost over. Nothing interesting ever happened on border patrol. The younger officers complained about the boredom, but Kethro appreciated the quiet. He had served in 3 conquest campaigns during his youth. He had seen enough excitement to last several lifetimes. "Sub-Commander," said his sensor operator, a young female named Yithra, "I am detecting an unknown vessel at the edge of our scanning range." Kethro turned to look at the display. A small dot appeared on the screen, moving slowly through space. It was not following any known trade route. It was not transmitting any identification signals. "Classification?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. The vessel does not match any design in our database." Kethro felt a small spark of curiosity. Unknown vessels were rare. The hegemony had cataloged every spacefaring species in the region. Every ship design was recorded. Every engine's signature was documented. "Bring us closer," he ordered. "Prepare a deep scan." The shimmering dawn turned toward the strange vessel. As they approached, Kethro got his first good look at the ship on the visual display. He felt his stomach twist with confusion. The vessel was ugly. There was no other word for it. It was blocky and angular, made of dull gray metal that looked like it had been hammered together by primitive craftsmen. It had none of the elegant curves of Veldrathi design. It had none of the organic flow of Korath raiders. It looked like someone had taken several large boxes, welded them together, and attached engines to the back. Strange symbols were painted on the hull. Kethro's translator struggled with them for a moment before producing a result. USS Ironclad, it read. Below the name was a rectangular symbol with red and white stripes and a blue corner filled with small white stars. "What is that thing?" Yithra asked, forgetting her military formality. "I do not know," Kethro admitted. "Begin the deep scan. Let us find out." The deep scan was the pride of Veldrathi technology. It could analyze any vessel down to its molecular structure within seconds. It could count the number of crew members aboard. It could identify the type of fuel in the engines. It could detect weapons, shields, and armor with perfect accuracy. The deep scan had allowed the hegemony to defeat countless enemies by knowing their weaknesses before the first shot was fired. Yithra activated the scanner. A beam of invisible energy washed over the strange vessel. Data began flowing onto her screen. Her eyes went wide. "Sub-Commander," she said. Her voice was shaking. "You need to see this." Kethro walked to her station and looked at the data. At first, he thought the scanner was malfunctioning. The numbers could not be correct. He ordered Yithra to run the scan again. The second scan produced the same results. The vessel was powered by a reactor that burned at temperatures that should have melted through any known material. The hull was made of layered metal alloys, some of which the scanner could not identify. The armor was designed to explode outward when struck, destroying incoming projectiles before they could penetrate. But the weapons were what made Kethro's blood run cold. The vessel carried kinetic weapons that could accelerate metal slugs to a fraction of light speed. At those velocities, even a small piece of metal would hit with the force of a nuclear explosion. It carried missiles tipped with nuclear warheads. It carried torpedoes containing antimatter. It carried something the translator could only render as hellfire warheads, and the scan could not even determine what those did. There are over 2,000 life signs aboard. Ethra whispered. They are warm-blooded. Their body temperature is much higher than any species on record. Their hearts beat very fast. Their brains show constant high-level activity. Cathral stared at the data. The vessel was smaller than his patrol ship. It should have been weaker. It should have been an easy target for any hegemony warship. Instead, it carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Who are they? He asked Don. Before anyone could answer, the communication system activated. A voice came through the speakers. It spoke in a language the translator had never heard before, but the computer worked quickly to decode it. Unidentified vessel. This is Captain Danny Vance of the United Earth Navy. You have performed an unauthorized scan of a military vessel. Please state your intentions. The voice was calm, almost casual. The speaker did not sound worried that a Veldrathi warship had just scanned his ship. He did not sound afraid. He sounded like a man who had been interrupted during his lunch break. Catherall did not know how to respond. He looked at the scan data again. He looked at the weapons listed there. He thought about what those weapons could do to his ship. Should I respond, sir? His communications officer asked. Catherall shook his head slowly. Contact High Command. Tell them we have encountered an unknown species. Tell them. He paused, trying to find the right words. Tell them we need the Eternal Radiance. The Eternal Radiance was the flagship of the Hegemony fleet. It was commanded by High Commander Sev Taurus, the most decorated officer in Veldrathi history. If anyone could deal with this situation, it was her. On the bridge of the Ironclad, Captain Danny Vance waited for a response. When none came, he shrugged and took another sip of his coffee. His executive officer, Commander Katie Marsh, walked over to stand beside him. They scanned us pretty thoroughly, she said. I'm guessing they didn't like what they found. Vance nodded. Probably not. Most species don't. Should we be worried? Vance looked at the alien vessel on his display. It was beautiful in its own way. The crystalline hull caught the starlight and scattered it into rainbows. The design was elegant and flowing. It looked like a work of art. His own ship looked like a block of iron with guns bolted onto it. That was because the Ironclad had not been designed to look pretty. It had been designed to fight. And fight. And keep fighting until there was nothing left to fight. No, Vance said. I don't think we need to be worried. He set down his coffee and watched the alien ship. Somewhere on that vessel, beings were learning about humanity for the first time. They were reading the scan data. They were seeing the weapons. They were probably asking themselves the same question every species asked when they first encountered humans. What kind of creature builds weapons like these? Vance knew the answer. Humans built weapons like these because they had spent their entire history fighting each other. They built weapons like these because they had learned, through countless wars and endless bloodshed, that the universe was not a kind place. They built weapons like these because they never wanted to be victims again. The aliens would figure that out soon enough. They always did. Vance leaned back in his chair and waited for whatever came next. The Eternal Radiance arrived within the hour. It was the largest ship in the Veldrathi fleet, a massive vessel of crystal and light that stretched nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern. Its weapons could crack moons. Its shields could withstand the heat of a star. It had never been defeated in battle. High Commander Sev Taurus stood on the bridge and watched, the ugly human vessel on her display. She had fought 47 conquest campaigns during her long career. She had defeated the Karath Raiders, the Mindless Swarm, and the machine armies of the Collective. She had earned more medals than any officer in hegemony history. Nothing in the galaxy frightened her, but something about this situation made her uneasy. She had reviewed Sub-Commander Catherall's scan data during the journey here. She had read it 3 times. Each time, she had hoped to find an error. Some mistake in the readings. Some glitch in the scanner. There was no error. The data was accurate. I want a full analysis, she ordered her science officers. I want to know everything about this vessel and the species that built it. Her officers worked quickly. They cross-referenced the scan data with every database in the hegemony archives. They analyzed the hull materials, the engine signatures, the weapon systems. They studied the life signs aboard the human ship. The chief science officer, an elderly male named Tethfor, presented the findings. His hands were trembling as he spoke. The species calls themselves humans, he began. They come from a planet called Earth, located in a system on the far side of the galaxy. They have only recently developed faster-than-light travel. This appears to be one of their first deep space exploration vessels. Sevtoris felt her unease grow stronger. This is an exploration vessel? Not a warship? Tethfor looked uncomfortable. According to their classification system, it is both. Humans do not seem to separate exploration from military function. All of their deep space vessels are armed. Heavily armed, another officer added quietly. Sevtoris looked at the data again. The human ship carried weapons that could destroy her flagship. It carried weapons designed to crack planets. And the humans considered this an exploration vessel. Tell me about their weapons, she ordered. Tethfor pulled up the relevant data. The kinetic weapons accelerate metal projectiles to approximately 15% of light speed. At impact, each projectile would release energy equivalent to a small nuclear explosion. Their missiles carry fusion warheads with yields in the megaton range. Their torpedoes contain antimatter charges capable of destroying vessels much larger than their own. He paused. And then there is the hull itself. What about the hull? It is layered. The outer layer is standard armor plating. But beneath that, there are sections of what we can only describe as reactive armor. When struck by a weapon, this armor explodes outward, destroying the incoming projectile before it can penetrate deeper into the ship. Sevtoris stared at him. Their armor is designed to explode? Yes, High Commander. They have built a ship that destroys enemy weapons by detonating sections of itself. The bridge fell silent. Every officer was trying to imagine the kind of species that would design such a thing. There is more, Tethfor said. His voice was barely above a whisper now. We have accessed their historical database. It was included in their identification broadcast. He activated a display. Images began to appear. Strange images. Terrifying images. The first showed humans fighting each other with primitive weapons. Swords and spears. Blood and fire. Cities burning. Bodies stacked in piles. The second showed more advanced warfare. Machines that rolled across the land, crushing everything in their path. Bombs falling from the sky. Entire cities reduced to rubble. The third showed something worse. A mushroom-shaped cloud rising into the sky. Destruction on a scale that Sevtoris could barely comprehend. Humans had built weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash of light. And they had used these weapons on each other. They call these their world wars, Tethfor explained. Conflicts that consumed their entire planet. Millions of their own species died. Possibly tens of millions. Their records are incomplete. Sevtoris watched the images change. War after war. Conflict after conflict. Humans had spent their entire history perfecting the art of killing each other. After the wars, they developed nuclear weapons, Tethfor continued. For several decades, different groups of humans aimed these weapons at each other. They built enough weapons to destroy their planet many times over. And they came very close to using them. But they did not, Sevtoris said. No, somehow they pulled back from the edge. They learned to cooperate. They built a unified government. They turned their attention to the stars. Tethfor paused. But they never forgot how to fight. They never disarmed. They simply redirected their focus. Scifistories looked at the human ship again. It sat in space, quiet and still. It made no threatening moves. It broadcast no hostile signals. It simply waited. Who designed them for this? She asked. It was the question every officer on the bridge was thinking. Tethver shook his head slowly. No one, High Commander. They designed themselves. Their evolution on Earth was brutal. Their planet is filled with predators, natural disasters, and deadly diseases. They survived by being tougher, smarter, and more adaptable than anything else on their world. And when they ran out of natural enemies to fight, they fought each other. He pulled up a final image. It showed a human standing in the ruins of a city. The human was wounded. Blood covered its face. But it was still standing, still fighting. Their bodies are remarkably resilient, Tethver said. They can survive injuries that would kill most species. They can function for extended periods without sleep. They can adapt to almost any environment. And they have an emotional drive that we do not fully understand. They call it many things. Determination, stubbornness, spite. Spite? Scifistories asked. The desire to continue fighting simply to prove that they cannot be defeated. They will sometimes endure great suffering just to show their enemies that they cannot be broken. Scifistories thought about this. She had conquered many species. Some had surrendered quickly. Some had fought bravely before accepting defeat. But she had never encountered a species that would keep fighting out of pure stubbornness. What is their crew complement? She asked. Over 2,000 individuals. Most are trained for shipboard operations, but approximately 500 are designated as something called Marines. Marines? Soldiers specifically trained for boarding enemy vessels and fighting in close quarters. They are equipped with armor, weapons, and specialized training for taking enemy ships by force. Scifistories felt a chill run through her body. Boarding actions were rare in galactic warfare. Most species avoided them. The idea of fighting inside a crippled ship, corridor by corridor, room by room, was horrifying to most civilized beings. Humans had trained specialists for it. High Commander, her communications officer said. The human vessel is hailing us. Their captain wishes to speak with you. Scifistories looked at the ugly human ship. She thought about everything she had learned. She thought about the weapons, the armor, the history of endless warfare, and she realized something that she had never felt in 47 campaigns. She was afraid. Open a channel, she ordered. Let us see what these humans want. The meeting was arranged for a neutral location, a small trading station on the edge of hegemony space. It was old and poorly maintained, but it had a conference room that could accommodate both species. More importantly, it was far from any major population centers. If something went wrong, the damage would be limited. High Commander Scifistories arrived with 50 armed guards. She told herself this was standard protocol for first contact situations. Deep down, she knew it was because she was terrified of the humans. Captain Danny Vance arrived with 2 companions. Just 2. He walked into the conference room with his hands empty and a relaxed smile on his face. Behind him came Commander Katie Marsh, a tall woman with sharp eyes, and Ben Holloway, a diplomatic attach with a friendly manner. 3 humans. No visible weapons. No armor. Just simple uniforms and calm expressions. Scifistories felt her guards tense up. They had all seen the scan data. They all knew what human weapons could do. And yet these 3 walked in as if they were attending a casual business meeting. The conference room had been set up with chairs, on opposite sides of a long table. On opposite sides of a long table. The Veldrathi delegation sat on one side. The humans sat on the other. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Scifistories studied the humans carefully. They looked so ordinary, Soft skin, rounded features, no natural weapons that she could see. No claws, no fangs, no armored scales. They looked like prey animals. But prey animals did not build weapons that could crack planets. Then Holloway spoke first. His voice was warm and friendly, with no hint of threat. "Hi, Commander. On behalf of the United Earth Government, I want to thank you for agreeing to this meeting. We understand that our appearance in your space was unexpected. We are here to assure you that humanity means no harm to the Veldrathi hegemony." Seftaris chose her words carefully. "You say you mean no harm, and yet your ship carries weapons capable of destroying my flagship. Your historical records show a species that has spent its entire existence at war. Forgive me if I find your peaceful intentions difficult to believe." Holloway nodded. He seemed unsurprised by the question. "That is a fair point, High Commander. Our history is indeed violent. We will not deny that. But we have learned from our past. We have grown beyond it. Have you?" Seftaris asked. "Your exploration vessel carries nuclear weapons. Your crew includes soldiers trained for close combat. You have not grown beyond violence. You have merely redirected it." Captain Vance leaned forward. He had been silent until now, content to let his diplomat do the talking. But something in Seftaris' words seemed to catch his attention. "High Commander," he said, "may I ask you something?" Seftaris nodded. "In your 3,000 years of rule, how many species has the hegemony conquered?" The question caught her off guard. She considered refusing to answer. But something in Vance's eyes told her that he already knew. 47, she admitted. "And how many of those species resisted?" "All of them, eventually." Vance nodded slowly. "And how many of them are still around today?" Seftaris said nothing. She did not need to. The answer was obvious. The conquered species had been absorbed into the hegemony. Their cultures had been erased. Their identities had been subsumed. They still existed, but only as servants of Veldrathi rule. "We know your history too, High Commander," Vance said. His voice was still calm, but there was a hardness beneath it now. "We know what happens to species that cannot defend themselves. We know what happens to the weak." He paused. "Humans will never be weak." Commander Marsh spoke for the first time. Her voice was lighter than Vance's, almost friendly. "Our weapons are not threats, High Commander. They are promises. Promises that we will never be conquered. Promises that we will never be subjugated. Promises that we will defend ourselves and our allies with everything we have." She smiled slightly. "The Ironclad is actually one of our smaller ships." Seftaris felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. Smaller ships. The vessel that could destroy her flagship was one of their smaller ships. "What do you want?" she asked. The question came out more desperate than she intended. Holloway took over again. "We want what any species wants, High Commander. Trade, friendship, allies. We have spent a long time alone on our world. Now we are reaching out to the stars. We hope to find neighbors who will welcome us. And if you find neighbors who do not welcome you..." Holloway's friendly expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. "Then we will defend ourselves. As we always have. As we always will." The room fell silent. Seftaris looked at the three humans sitting across from her. They seemed so small, so fragile, so utterly harmless. And yet she knew that if she gave the order to attack, they would fight. They would fight with everything they had. They would fight until they won or until they were destroyed. There would be no surrender. There would be no negotiation. There would only be war. She thought about her fleet. The Eternal Radiance and its escort vessels were powerful. They could probably destroy the Ironclad, eventually, with heavy losses. But the Ironclad was one of their smaller ships. How many larger ships did humanity have? How many fleets? How many weapons that she could not even imagine? Captain Vance seemed to read her thoughts. "High Commander, we did not come here looking for enemies. We came here looking for friends. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. There are threats out there that neither of our species can face alone." He stood up and walked around the table. Sevtorus' S-guards raised their weapons, but Vance ignored them. He stopped in front of her and extended his hand. "Let us be friends, High Commander. Let us face the dangers of the galaxy together. We have much to offer each other." Sevtorus looked at his hand. In Veldrathi culture, the equivalent gesture would be a clasping of tentacles. It meant trust. It meant partnership. It meant placing yourself at the mercy of another. She looked into Vance's eyes. She saw something there that surprised her. Kindness. Genuine warmth. This was not a creature looking for victims. This was a creature looking for companions. But beneath the kindness, she saw something else. Something hard and cold and utterly unyielding. This was a creature that would burn the galaxy to ashes before it allowed itself to be defeated. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out and took his hand. "Friends?" she said. "Yes, let us be friends." And in that moment, the Veldrathi hegemony changed forever. Suddenly, alarm systems began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed. Warning messages scrolled across every display. Commander Marsh checked her communicator. Her expression went from relaxed to focused in an instant. "Captain," she said, "we have incoming. 12 ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They are not Veldrathi." Sevtorus felt her blood turn cold. She recognized the ship signatures on the station's sensors. The angular hulls. The dark colors. The weapon configurations designed for terror. "Korath," she whispered. Korath raiders. The most brutal slavers in the sector had just arrived. And they had brought a fleet. The Korath fleet spread out across the sector like a dark stain against the stars. 12 warships, each one bristling with plasma cannons and missile pods. They were not the largest ships in the galaxy, but they were fast, ruthless, and completely without mercy. High Commander Sevtorus knew the Korath well. She had fought them many times over the centuries. They were slavers who raided the edges of hegemony space, taking prisoners for their flesh markets and leaving nothing but destruction behind. They took no prisoners worth keeping. They showed no quarter. She calculated the odds quickly. The trading station had minimal defenses. Her flagship, the Eternal Radiance, was powerful, but 12 Korath vessels was a formidable force. The battle would be costly. Victory was not guaranteed. "We need to evacuate," she told her officers. "Get our people to the escape pods. Contact the fleet for reinforcements." Captain Vance shook his head. "How long until reinforcements arrive?" 3 hours. Perhaps 4. The station will be destroyed in 30 minutes. Your escape pods will be captured. Everyone here will be taken." Sevtorus knew he was right. The Korath were fast. They would intercept the escape pods before they could reach safety. Everyone on this station would end up in chains. Vance turned to Commander Marsh. "Katie, get back to the Ironclad. I want all weapons hot in 5 minutes. Tell the Marines to stand by for possible boarding action." Marsh nodded and ran for the docking bay. Ben Holloway followed close behind. Sevtorus stared at Vance. "What are you doing?" "Requesting permission to engage the enemy, High Commander. You have 1 ship. They have 12. Vance smiled. It was not a threatening smile. It was the smile of a man who knew something that she did not. 1 human ship, he said. That should be enough. Before she could argue, he was gone, running toward the docking bay with a speed that surprised her. Within minutes, the Ironclad detached from the station and began moving toward the Korath fleet. Sevtorus watched from the station's observation deck. Her officers gathered around her, their faces filled with confusion and fear. "What is he doing?" one of them asked. "He's going to get himself killed." Sevtaris did not answer. She watched the ugly human ship move through space. It looked so small compared to the Korath vessels. So fragile. So utterly doomed. Then the ironclad opened fire. The first Korath ship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a dark shape against the stars. The next moment it was a cloud of expanding debris, shattered into a million pieces by the impact of a kinetic round traveling at 15% of light speed. The second ship tried to raise shields. The shields flickered into existence for perhaps half a second before a second kinetic round punched through them like paper. The ship broke apart, its reactor going critical and consuming the wreckage in a ball of nuclear fire. The Korath fleet scattered in panic. They had expected easy prey. They had expected a defenseless station and a handful of merchant vessels. They had not expected this. The ironclad did not slow down. It charged directly into the enemy formation, its engines burning at full power. Plasma bolts from the Korath ships splashed against its hull, leaving scorch marks but failing to penetrate. Missiles streaked toward it, only to be swatted down by the point defense systems that created a web of destruction around the ship. Sevtaris watched in amazement as the human vessel took hit after hit and kept fighting. She had never seen anything like it. Her own ships would have been crippled by now. But the ironclad shrugged off the damage as if it meant nothing. A third Korath ship tried to flee. A nuclear missile caught it in the engine section, and the explosion tore the vessel in half. A fourth ship attempted to target the ironclad's bridge with a concentrated plasma burst. The reactive armor along the ship's flank detonated outward, destroying the plasma bolt before it could reach its target. The Korath commander ordered a retreat. His remaining ships began to turn, preparing to jump to hyperspace. They had lost 4 vessels in less than 2 minutes. The battle was already lost. The ironclad did not let them go. Kinetic rounds streaked across the void, catching 2 more ships as they tried to escape. A spread of missiles took out another. The point defense systems on the ironclad shifted to offensive mode, filling space with a storm of smaller projectiles. That shredded a Korath frigate trying to slip past. 8 ships destroyed in less than 5 minutes, the 4 surviving. Korath vessels finally managed to jump to hyperspace. They left behind a debris field that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Wreckage tumbled through the void. Escape pods drifted among the ruins. On the station, Sevtaris realized she had stopped breathing. She forced herself to take a breath. Her hands were shaking. Her communications officer spoke. "Hi, Commander. The ironclad is hailing us." Commander Marsh's voice came through the speakers. She sounded almost bored. "Station Command, this is the ironclad. Enemy forces have been neutralized. We are moving to secure the debris field and recover survivors. Captain Vance requests permission to transfer any prisoners to Veldrathi custody once we have completed our sweep." Sevtaris found her voice. "Prisoners? You took prisoners?" "Yes, ma'am. Our Marines boarded 3 of the damaged vessels before they were destroyed. We have approximately 300 Korath in custody. They surrendered pretty quickly once our boys got inside. The Marines. The soldiers trained for close combat. They had boarded enemy ships during an active battle and taken prisoners." Sevtaris looked at the debris field on the display. 8 Korath warships destroyed. 3 more captured through boarding action. 1 human vessel against 12 enemies. 11 minutes. The entire battle had lasted 11 minutes. "Hi, Commander," Marsh continued. "The captain wants me to let you know that we sustained minor damage. Some hull scoring on the port side. One of our secondary sensor arrays was knocked offline. We estimate repairs will take approximately 4 hours. Minor damage. They considered that minor damage. Sevtoris thought about her own fleet. The Eternal Radiance was the most powerful ship in the hegemony. It had weapons that could crack moons, shields that could withstand the heat of a star, and she was suddenly, terribly certain that the Ironclad could destroy it. She thought about the human historical database, the endless wars, the nuclear standoffs, the millions of dead. She thought about what Vance had said during their meeting. Humans will never be weak. She understood now. She understood why humans built weapons like these. She understood why they trained soldiers for boarding action. She understood why they never stopped preparing for war even after they had achieved peace, because the universe was not kind, because weakness meant death, because the only way to guarantee survival was to be so dangerous that no one would dare attack you. The Korath had learned that lesson today. They had scanned a human battleship, and they had instantly wished they had not. Sevtoris looked at the debris field one more time. Then she turned to her communications officer. "Tell Captain Vance that we will be honored to accept the prisoners. And tell him." She paused, searching for the right words. "Tell him that the Veldrathi hegemony is grateful for his assistance." The officer nodded and transmitted the message. Sevtoris walked to the observation window and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was changing. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The Hegemony Council Chamber was the largest room in the capital city. Its walls were made of pure crystal that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Every major decision in Veldrathi history had been made in this room today. The council was debating the most important decision in 3,000 years. High Commander Sevtoris stood before the assembled leaders. She had spent the past 3 days presenting her findings. The scan data, the historical records, the battle against the Korath. Every piece of information she had gathered about humanity. The council members had listened in growing horror. "We must strike first," said Councillor Vethra. He was young and ambitious, with no experience in actual warfare. "Before these humans grow too strong, before they threaten our borders." Several council members nodded in agreement. They were afraid. Sevtoris could see it in their eyes. They had spent their entire lives believing that the hegemony was invincible. Now they had learned that a single human ship could destroy their fleet. Fear made people do stupid things. "And what happens after we strike?" Sevtoris asked. "Do you truly believe we can defeat humanity?" "We have 1,000 warships," Vethra replied. "They have one vessel in our space. The mathematics are clear. The Ironclad is one of their smaller ships. Those are Captain Vance's exact words. What happens when we face their larger vessels? What happens when we face their entire fleet?" Vethra had no answer. Another council member spoke. This one was older, more cautious. "Perhaps we should simply ignore them. Avoid contact. Pretend they do not exist." Sevtoris shook her head. "Humanity is expanding. They are building colonies, exploring new systems. Within a generation, they will reach the heart of hegemony space. We cannot ignore them forever. Then what do you suggest?" The council leader asked. Her name was Mithari, and she was the oldest living Veldrathi. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had witnessed the birth and death of stars. Sevtoris took a deep breath. "I suggest an alliance." The chamber erupted in shouting. Council members argued with each other. Some demanded war. Others demanded isolation. A few simply sat in stunned silence. Mithari raised her hand. The room fell quiet. "Explain your reasoning, High Commander." Sevtoris gathered her thoughts. This was the most important speech of her life. "I have fought 47 conquest campaigns," she began. I have defeated every enemy the hegemony has faced. I know war better than anyone in this room. And I am telling you now, with absolute certainty, that we cannot defeat humanity in open conflict. She activated a display showing the human historical database. These creatures evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They survived ice ages that froze their planet. They survived predators that were faster, stronger, and deadlier than themselves. They survived diseases that killed millions. And they survived each other. The display showed images of human warfare. Ancient battles with swords and shields. Modern conflicts with tanks and aircraft. Nuclear explosions that consumed entire cities. They spent their entire history learning how to fight. They turned violence into an art form. They developed weapons that could destroy their own world, and then they built even more powerful weapons. They never stopped. They never rested. They simply kept getting stronger. She paused. But here is the part that matters. After all of that violence, after all of that bloodshed, they learned something. They learned that cooperation was better than conquest. They learned that building was better than destroying. They learned that friendship was more valuable than dominance. The display changed to show human achievements. Vast cities. Beautiful artwork. Scientific discoveries that push the boundaries of knowledge. Humans have two sides to their nature. They are capable of terrible destruction, but they are also capable of remarkable creation. They are violent, yes, but they are also curious, kind, and generous. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and they want to be our friends. She looked around the chamber. The council members were listening now. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else. Curiosity. Hope. I have met these humans. I have looked into their eyes. I have seen what they are capable of. And I am telling you that they are not a threat to the hegemony. Not unless we make them one. She took a step forward. If we attack them, they will fight back. They will fight until they win or until they are destroyed. There will be no surrender. There will be no negotiation. And based on what I have seen, I believe they will win. Another step. But if we befriend them, if we ally with them, we will have the most powerful partners in the galaxy. They will fight for us as fiercely as they fight for themselves. They will defend our borders. They will protect our people. They will stand beside us against any threat. She stopped in front of Mathari. The choice is simple, counselor. We can make humanity our enemy, or we can make them our friends. I know which option I prefer. The chamber was silent. Mathari looked at Sev Taurus for a long moment. Then she looked at the other council members. Vote, she said simply. One by one, the council members cast their votes. When the tally was complete, Mathari announced the result. The vote is unanimous. The hegemony will seek an alliance with humanity. 6 months later, Captain Danny Vance stood on the observation deck of the Ironclad. Through the windows, he could see the first joint hegemony human patrol fleet forming up. Veldrathi crystal ships flew alongside human metal vessels. It was a strange sight. Beautiful in its own way. Commander Katie Marsh walked up beside him. She carried 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to him. First patrol of the Alliance fleet, she said. Historic moment. Vance nodded. Strange, isn't it? 6 months ago, they were terrified of us. Now they're flying formation with us. Think they'll ever stop being afraid of us? Vance considered the question. Somewhere on those Veldrathi ships, officers were nervously reviewing human weapons specifications. Diplomats were learning human customs. Scientists were studying human biology, still amazed that such fragile-looking creatures could be so dangerous. Maybe someday, he said. But honestly, a little fear is not the worst foundation for respect. Marsh raised her cup. To new friends? Vance touched his cup to hers. To new friends, and to making sure they never see us as enemies. He looked out at the fleet. Dozens of ships from 2 different species, working together for the first time. It was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, misunderstandings, conflicts, growing pains, but humanity had faced worse. Much worse. And they had always survived. Outside the window, the stars waited. Ancient and cold and utterly indifferent to the small creatures that traveled between them. But those small creatures were not indifferent to each other. They were learning to work together. They were learning to trust. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy. They had come with weapons that could crack planets and warriors who would never surrender. They had come with a history written in blood and fire, but they had also come with open hands and hopeful hearts. They had come looking for friends, and they had found them. The fleet began to move, engines flaring against the darkness. Together, humans and Veldrathi set out to face whatever the universe had in store. They were ready.